Toast in the mornings, rolls at family dinners. It feels like the one food you never need to question. But that trust has become the perfect disguise, because the loaves that look harmless are often loaded with hidden preservatives, mold spores, and sodium levels that no aging heart or kidney should be forced to handle. What seems like tradition may actually be a slow betrayal hiding inside a plastic bag. The illusion starts with softness. That spongy, pillow-like texture isn't the result of wholesome baking. It's the product of chemicals and stabilizers built into the dough. Additives like dough conditioners and shelf-life extenders are blended in to keep loaves fluffy long after they should naturally harden. That bag you squeeze in the grocery aisle, still soft 2 weeks later, doesn't owe its texture to freshness. It owes it to compounds your body struggles to process. For younger adults, maybe the kidneys and liver manage the burden. For seniors, those organs are already strained. Each slice is another demand on systems that have been working for decades, and then comes the mold. White sandwich bread has been flagged time and again for contamination issues at the factory and on store shelves. Consumers post photos of sealed bags with green fuzz crawling up the crusts, proof that the preservatives can't mask sloppy storage or contamination in production. That's not a forgotten loaf left in the pantry for weeks. That's mold appearing while the bag is still sealed, still stamped with a fresh date. For seniors, mold isn't just gross, it's dangerous. Spores can trigger respiratory infections, sinus irritation, even digestive problems when immune systems aren't as strong. A simple slice of toast becomes a potential trigger for days of illness. The sodium numbers tell another story. One slice of soft white bread often carries 150 milligrams of sodium or more. 2 slices plus sandwich fillings, and a senior on heart or blood pressure medication can easily blow past 400 milligrams in one meal. Doctors spend months trying to stabilize those numbers, while a single sandwich unravels the progress in minutes. Bread isn't supposed to spike blood pressure. But the salt hiding inside these loaves makes it happen quietly, meal after meal, while the eater never realizes the connection. Picture this. A senior wakes up, makes toast, feels fine. By midday, the ankles are swollen, the blood pressure monitor shows numbers edging higher, the body feels heavier. They blame age, stress, maybe even the weather. But the real culprit is often as close as the bread drawer. High sodium plus chemical preservatives equals kidneys working harder, hearts straining against pressure, bodies taxed for comfort that was supposed to be safe, and the betrayal cuts deep. Bread has always been marketed as the food that builds strength, the backbone of sandwiches and family meals. But today, what sits in those plastic bags is less a source of strength and more a source of hidden risks. The very food that seniors trust most is loaded with the very compounds their bodies can least afford. That soft slice isn't nourishing. It's testing the immune system, pushing the heart, and overworking the kidneys. Would you still call it safe if you knew the loaf on your counter carried more chemicals than nutrients? Would you still call it tradition if mold could bloom before you even opened the bag? Bread should feed you, not trick you. Seniors deserve more than softness bought with preservatives. They deserve bread that nourishes without leaving hidden costs. And if you think white bread is the only culprit, think again. Because the next type of loaf hides its danger in sweetness, sugar tucked into every bite, yeast overgrowth that doesn't stop after baking, and a texture that leaves more than comfort behind. For seniors managing blood sugar, that so-called family-friendly bread isn't a treat. It's a trap. Milei, por último, solo pensaba en la portada de su próximo libro. Cómo derroté al socialismo en su propia casa. Ni siquiera había terminado la cumbre. Pero ya se imaginaba firmando ejemplares en Miami, rodeado de cámaras, diciendo que había puesto en su sitio a los populistas latinoamericanos. Lo que comenzó como una mesa de diálogo se había transformado en una guerra silenciosa, pero despiadada. Los tres no volverían a verse como colegas. A partir de ahora serían enemigos públicos. Y América Latina, una vez más, sería el campo de batalla. Some breads don't hide behind plain white softness. Instead, they lure you in with sweetness. Golden crusts, a sugary aroma, slices that feel tender and comforting. They are marketed as family-friendly, perfect for toast in the morning or sandwiches in the afternoon. But for seniors, these sweet loaves are sugar bombs dressed as staples, and what they do inside the body is more destructive than the gentle image on the bag suggests. The first danger is sugar itself. Many sweet sandwich loaves are packed with hidden sugar to create that tender bite and caramelized flavor. One slice may carry more sugar than you expect, and 2 slices quickly add up. For a senior managing diabetes or blood sugar control, those numbers aren't just statistics, they are triggers. That seemingly innocent sandwich for lunch can spike glucose levels, leaving you drained, dizzy, or worse. Add jam or honey on top, and the sugar surge becomes a roller coaster your body is too fragile to handle. What looks like comfort is actually a blood sugar gamble. Then comes yeast. Bread should rise in the oven, then stop. But poor fermentation control means yeast overgrowth sometimes continues even after packaging. That's why slices can feel oddly spongy, with trapped gas pockets that make the texture strange and the taste faintly sour. Not the healthy sour of traditional sourdough, but an off note that signals something went wrong. Customers have described bread that smells sweet at first, but hides a sharp tang underneath, the kind that makes your stomach uneasy after eating. For seniors with sensitive digestion, this means bloating, cramps, and discomfort that can linger for days. The betrayal here is that these loaves wear the costume of family tradition. They promise softness and sweetness that remind you of childhood breakfasts, but behind the scenes they are produced with shortcuts that undermine gut health. Extra sugar feeds yeast in the body, fueling imbalance in the digestive tract. Seniors already struggling with medication absorption or fragile digestion find themselves weakened by what should have been the gentlest of foods. A loaf that pretends to comfort ends up attacking from within. Picture the scene. You open a bag expecting the sweet smell of freshly baked bread. You inhale and at first it feels right, but underneath is a faint sourness, a hidden warning. You make a sandwich, take 2 slices, enjoy the tender chew, but hours later you feel the weight. Your stomach cramps, your energy dips, and the scale tips against you. This isn't nostalgia. This is sabotage. Health inspectors have long warned about the sugar content in packaged sweetbreads. It doesn't make headlines like big recalls, but the danger is steady and relentless. Every extra gram of sugar means higher risks for seniors already fighting to stabilize blood sugar. Every yeast imbalance means weaker digestion, disrupted medication, or worse. For someone young, this may pass as discomfort. For someone older, it can spiral into something far more serious. The fix is simple, but it requires awareness. Look at labels. Avoid loaves that list sugar near the top of the ingredients. Choose breads with less than 2 grams of sugar per slice. Avoid enriched flours stripped of fiber and nutrients. For seniors, the difference between a sugar bomb and a steady loaf can mean the difference between balance and chaos in daily health. But the bigger problem is trust. These loaves promise sweetness and comfort, but deliver bloating and sugar spikes. They betray the very people who count on them. Bread should be nourishment. It should give you stability, not rob you of it. And if you thought sweetness was the only hidden danger, think again. Because the next category of bread wears a mask of wholesomeness, branded as natural, pure, even healthy. Yet inside the bag, those so-called natural loaves carry mold, spoilage, and risks that show up faster than you can toast your first slice. Walk down the bread aisle and you'll see bags that scream words like natural, pure, wholesome. The fonts look rustic, the packaging earthy, the message simple. This bread is safer, cleaner, and closer to nature. Seniors often reach for these loaves thinking they're making the better choice, avoiding preservatives and chemicals. But the betrayal here is that what looks like a safe option often spoils faster than anything else, turning into a mold nursery before you've even finished half the bag. Reports and consumer complaints reveal the same story over and over. Mold appearing on loaves within 3 or 4 days of purchase, even when sealed and stored properly. That's not the forgotten slice left on the counter. It's bread turning sour while the sell-by date is still weeks away. Shoppers open bags to find green freckles creeping up the crust, a sour odor that overwhelms the kitchen, slices sticking together as if damp from the inside. For most, it's an inconvenience. For seniors, it's a serious health risk. Mold spores are not harmless. They can trigger respiratory irritation, sinus infections, coughing fits, and in immune-compromised seniors, even more severe consequences. What seems like just a bad loaf can mean days of struggling with breathing or digestive upset. Seniors on kidney or heart medication may already have weaker defenses, making the risk even sharper. One speck of mold doesn't just look ugly. It signals contamination that runs through the entire loaf. Spores invisible to the eye but dangerous once eaten. The irony is that these breads market themselves as preservative-free, as though that's always a guarantee of health. But preservative-free without careful storage and proper handling in warehouses just means faster spoilage. And the pattern is clear. Loaves arrive on shelves already vulnerable, and by the time they hit the pantry, they're racing against time. Store workers themselves have vented about shipments arriving with early signs of fuzz, whole pallets pulled before customers noticed. It's not just bad luck. It's a structural problem in the way these natural breads are produced and stored. Picture opening your bread bag for breakfast, expecting a hearty slice of whole wheat toast. Instead, a sour tang greets you, and you notice a tiny green bloom on the crust. You think you can cut around it, but the spores have already spread, invisible threads weaving through the loaf. You're not eating wheat, you're eating mold, disguised as food. For seniors with fragile health, that simple breakfast could spiral into a respiratory infection or a hospital visit. And let's not forget the sodium. Many so-called natural loaves still pack 150–170 milligrams of sodium per slice. Add 2 slices and sandwich fillings, and you're back over 400 milligrams in one meal. Pair that with mold risks, and you've got a product that hurts both from the inside and the outside, chemically stressing the heart while biologically attacking the immune system. That's not natural. That's neglect hidden under rustic fonts and earthy branding. The fix is simple, but it requires vigilance. If you want preservative-free bread, buy it fresh from a bakery, slice it and freeze it. Pull out what you need and you won't face green fuzz by midweek. Freezing is the only way to stop mold without loading the dough with chemicals. For seniors especially, this is the safest path. Bread that is genuinely fresh, stored in a way that doesn't invite mold into your meals. But here's the bigger problem: trust. When a loaf calls itself natural, people trust it. They pay more for it, believing they're making the healthier choice. And when mold shows up early, that trust is shattered. Bread that should have been nourishment turns into waste at best, illness at worst. And if you think early mold is the worst danger, the next betrayal is even sharper. Because premium breads, sold at higher prices and wrapped in fancier bags, hide their own risks. Loaves exposed to damp warehouses, stale before they ever reach your counter, and loaded with sodium levels that quietly sabotage senior health. Some loaves sit on the shelf wrapped in elegant bags, carrying names that whisper heritage, craft, and quality. They cost more than the basic white breads, and that higher price tag makes people, especially seniors, believe they are getting something safer, fresher, and more carefully made. But the truth is far from that image. Behind the glossy branding, many so-called premium breads suffer from storage failures, mold risks, and sodium levels that quietly sabotage health while hiding under fancy packaging. Reports from inspectors and warehouse workers tell the same story. Pallets of bread stored in damp corners, loaves stacked too close to poorly ventilated walls, moisture trapped inside plastic bags. Bread that should arrive crisp and fragrant often reaches shelves already stale, or worse, already flirting with mold. Customers describe opening sealed bags only to find crusts that crack like old plaster, slices that smell sour, or green spots appearing within days of purchase. That's not artisan charm, that's negligence wrapped in marketing. And then there's the salt. Premium loaves often carry 170 to 190 milligrams of sodium per slice. 2 slices for a sandwich and you're already close to 400 milligrams before adding cheese, meats, or spreads. For seniors managing hypertension, those numbers are silent killers. Each lunch pushes blood pressure higher. Each snack makes kidneys work harder. Each slice chips away at the progress that medications and lifestyle changes are supposed to secure. Bread isn't supposed to betray you, but these loaves do exactly that, silently, meal after meal. Picture the warehouse, rows of plastic-wrapped loaves sitting under humid air, crusts absorbing dampness, bags sweating before they ever leave for stores. By the time they hit the grocery aisle, the bread may already be compromised. Stale texture, brittle crusts, or subtle sour notes signal that the loaf has been damaged long before you opened it. For seniors with weakened immune systems, this isn't just about taste. It's about risk. Mold spores inhaled, sodium flooding the bloodstream, preservatives combining with damp storage to create a perfect storm of health hazards. The betrayal stings harder because of the image. Premium breads are marketed as traditional, wholesome, crafted with care. Seniors pay more, believing they are protecting their health. Instead, they get loaves that crumble too soon, taste like storage air, and quietly load their bodies with salt that their hearts can't afford. You pay extra for quality, but what you're really buying is a gamble, a slice that could nourish you, or push you one step closer to a hospital visit. And this is not about one bad shipment or one unlucky store. Warehouse workers themselves admit in forums that improper handling is common. Pallets stacked against damp walls. Trucks loaded without temperature checks. Loaves sitting too long before distribution. Bread that should feel like nourishment instead feels like a gamble, a roll of the dice with every sandwich. For seniors who need stability more than ever, this isn't acceptable. Bread should support health, not undermine it. But premium branding often hides the opposite. Poor storage, careless handling, and sodium levels that make every bite more dangerous. And if you thought a brittle crust or high sodium were the worst betrayals, the next category goes even deeper. Because the artisan style and multi-grain loaves that sell themselves as healthier, natural and sophisticated carry their own hidden risks, undeclared allergens, cross-contamination, and even bacterial threats like listeria. Some breads take on a more sophisticated look, thick slices, dotted with seeds, grains pressed into the crust, bags decorated with earthy colors, and words like organic whole grain or artisan. These loaves are sold as the smarter choice, the safer option compared to white or sugary breads. Seniors often pay extra for them, believing the promise of health. But the harsh truth is that these loaves carry hidden risks that go far beyond sugar or sodium. They bring undeclared allergens, cross-contamination from sloppy production lines, and even bacterial threats that can turn a wholesome-looking loaf into a hospital-level problem. Allergens are one of the biggest hidden dangers. Multigrain loaves often contain seeds, nuts, or soy, sometimes without clear labeling or with labels that miss cross-contact warnings. Inspectors have flagged cases where production lines weren't cleaned properly, allowing sesame or nut residues to slip into batches that weren't supposed to contain them. For younger adults, this may be an inconvenience. For seniors with allergies, it can be life-threatening. A reaction combined with medications or weakened immune systems can spiral fast, hives, swelling, difficulty breathing, or worse. Seniors balancing multiple health conditions don't need bread turning into another unpredictable risk. Then there's the issue of contamination. Artisan-style breads are often made in large batches with heavy machinery that requires deep cleaning. But when deadlines matter more than safety, shortcuts happen. Workers have admitted in forums that bins weren't always sanitized, conveyor belts carried crumbs from one batch to the next, and inspection checks were skipped to keep production moving. This is how bacteria like listeria sneaks in. For most healthy adults, it's a serious foodborne illness. For seniors, listeria is devastating. Fever, chills, confusion, even sepsis or meningitis. According to the CDC, seniors make up the majority of deaths from listeria infections each year, and contaminated bread has been flagged more than once as the source. The betrayal here is in the branding. These loaves look hearty and feel dense, convincing shoppers they're the safer bet. But seniors open the bag to find slices that feel clammy, smell faintly sour, or carry textures that don't seem right. Instead of smelling the warm, yeasty aroma of true fresh bread, they inhale something damp and musty, closer to storage air than a bakery. What was sold as a premium, health-conscious product becomes a gamble with allergens or bacteria. Picture it. A senior makes a sandwich with a thick, seeded slice. It looks hearty, full of grains, like a perfect choice. Hours later, instead of feeling nourished, they feel stomach cramps, dizziness, or confusion. Maybe it's just dismissed as age or fatigue. But in reality, it's the bread itself, seeds or allergens slipping in, or bacteria that never should have been there. The loaf that promised vitality instead delivers a setback, sometimes serious enough to land in the ER. Even worse, these breads are expensive. Seniors often spend more, believing they're buying protection. Instead, they're paying extra for risks wrapped in rustic branding. A product that should represent safety and wellness becomes a Trojan horse of allergens and contamination. The fix requires vigilance. Seniors should look for breads certified allergen-free, baked in dedicated facilities. Smaller local bakeries are often safer, able to tell you exactly what went into the dough and how equipment is cleaned. And if you choose packaged artisan loaves, freezing is once again your ally. Bacteria and mold thrive in warm, damp storage. Freezing what you don't eat immediately lowers the risks dramatically, but the betrayal remains sharp. These loaves trade on an image of wholesomeness, while hiding some of the worst dangers in the bread aisle. They're not just overpriced, they're unsafe. And if allergens and bacteria weren't bad enough, the next category pushes the deception even further. Because the giant, fluffy loaves sold by massive factories don't just spoil fast or overload you with sodium. They combine everything: mold, preservatives, rushed production shortcuts, into loaves that dominate shelves but quietly endanger the very people who trust them most. At the top of the bread aisle are the giant, fluffy loaves that dominate half the shelf space. They look comforting. Big bags, soft slices, brands so familiar they feel like family. Seniors reach for them because they're affordable, accessible, and everywhere. But what looks like safety on a budget is one of the most dangerous illusions in food. These empire-scale breads combine every risk you've already heard: mold, preservatives, sodium overload, allergen mistakes, into loaves that move coast to coast before they ever touch your table. The problem starts with scale. Massive factories churn out millions of loaves daily, shipping them across the country. With that kind of volume, shortcuts aren't accidents, they're part of the process. Inspectors have cited facilities for ventilation failures that allow mold to bloom before bread even leaves the warehouse. Workers have admitted schedules are so rushed that cooling times are skipped, sealing loaves while still warm, trapping moisture inside the bag. That shortcut is a mold invitation, guaranteeing that green fuzz can appear days later, even if you've kept it sealed and stored properly. Bread is supposed to nourish you, not rot in the bag before you finish your first sandwich. Then comes the salt. Many mass-produced loaves pack more than 220 milligrams of sodium per slice. 2 slices for a sandwich means nearly half a senior's daily safe intake gone before lunch. Add cold cuts or cheese, and the blood pressure spike is immediate. For seniors on heart or kidney medication, that's not just a number. It's a risk of dizziness, swelling, and strain that undo months of careful diet management. Sodium doesn't make headlines like mold, but it's the silent killer baked into every oversized slice, and the betrayals don't stop there. Labeling errors are common when products are rushed at scale. Undeclared allergens, missing warnings, sloppy ingredient switches, mistakes that can send seniors with sensitivity straight to the ER. A loaf that should be the most reliable turns into a gamble because speed and profit matter more than safety. You trust the label, but behind it are workers admitting that crumbs and seeds bounce from one batch to another, creating cross-contact that inspectors later flag. Picture opening one of these empire loaves. The bag feels greasy, the crust too soft, almost damp. Drop a slice in the toaster, and instead of warm, comforting aroma, a sour steam rises, signaling spoilage. You taste it anyway, because it looks normal, but hours later your body tells the truth: bloating, cramps, or fatigue. For seniors with weaker immunity, that slice isn't just disappointing. It's dangerous. This is the ultimate betrayal. The biggest brands, the ones that claim tradition, quality, and trust, are often the worst offenders. They could afford spotless facilities and stricter testing. Instead, speed wins, cost-cutting wins, and consumers, especially seniors, lose. These loaves dominate shelves not because they're safe, but because they're cheap to make, engineered to stay soft, and marketed with nostalgia. Behind the wrapper, they are mold risk, salt bombs, and allergen traps waiting for their turn. But here's the good news: not every loaf is a trap. There are still safe alternatives, if you know where to look. The first safe choice is sprouted grain bread. Made from grains like wheat, barley, lentils, and millet, these loaves skip the preservatives and focus on real nutrition. Each slice is dense, nutty, and nourishing, with sodium often half that of commercial breads. Sprouted grains digest more easily, reducing blood sugar spikes and making it easier for seniors managing diabetes or energy balance. They freeze well too, so you can pull out slices without fearing mold. When you toast sprouted bread, You don't smell chemicals. You smell real grain and yeast, the way bread should be. The second safe choice is organic, thin-sliced, whole-grain bread. Unlike the oversized commercial slices, these loaves give you portion control without sacrificing taste. Thin slices mean fewer calories and less sodium, often under 120 milligrams per slice, while still delivering the crunch and fiber of real grains. Seniors benefit from the steady energy, easier digestion, and lower sodium hit that doesn't overwhelm blood pressure or kidneys. When produced under strict organic standards, these breads also avoid the allergen slip-ups and preservative overloads of empire-scale brands. The difference is clear. Unsafe loaves spoil fast, hide chemicals, and overload you with salt. Safe loaves may be denser or smaller, but they deliver honesty and health in every bite. Bread doesn't need to be a gamble. With the right choices, it can return to being what it always should have been: nourishment, stability, and comfort without compromise. So the next time you stand in the bread aisle, remember this: the biggest bag isn't the safest, the fluffiest slice isn't the healthiest, and the most nostalgic brand may be the most dangerous of all. Choose bread that tells the truth, because for seniors, every slice matters, and your body deserves better than the empire of mold and salt hiding behind plastic wrappers.